It was 9:23 a.m., June 14, 2025, in the shimmering waters of the South China Sea. The USS Princeton was on yet another calm patrol, a routine freedom of navigation mission. Then, her SPY radar picked up something that could have ignited World War III. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer, silent until now, suddenly roared to life, jumping from 18 to 30 knots in less than 90 seconds. What the Americans didn't know was that the captain aboard the Zhongzhong had just received a chilling order from Beijing: intercept them and make them blink first. But Beijing was about to discover why challenging the U.S. Navy in open waters is a very, very bad idea. The Nimitz carrier strike group nearby had been doing what the U.S. Navy has done best for 3/4 of a century: keeping global trade flowing. Those ships protected sea lanes that fed China's own factories, the same factories shipping cheap electronics to Best Buy. Now, at 180 nautical miles from Chinese territory, they were in international waters, a beating heart of $3.4 trillion in annual trade. Their mission: uphold freedom of the seas. Predictable, transparent, professional, exactly what separates a navy from a floating militia. At 9:26, radar classification confirmed the threat: a Chinese 052D destroyer, fast and closing, labeled moderate to high risk. Inside Princeton's Combat Information Center, the tactical officer watched calmly. He had 122 vertical launch cells, each capable of vaporizing anything Beijing could send. On his radar, the enemy ship glowed bright and clear, every antenna, every turret visible. At current speed, it would reach weapons range in 17 minutes. The math didn't favor China. Their YJ-18 anti-ship missiles could cross that gap in under 4 minutes, but the Princeton's SM-6 interceptors reached 240 nautical miles. More than enough to swat them down. Intent? The captain asked. At this speed, engagement range in 14 minutes. Recommendation: go to general quarters. His response? Pure American composure. Let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves first. All around, the sea was crowded with life. 46 commercial vessels within 50 miles. Singaporean container ships, South Korean LNG tankers worth hundreds of millions, every one of them sailing safely under the quiet shield of the U.S. Navy. Beijing wanted to turn this ocean into its private backyard. But first, they'd have to win a fight they'd never won against the U.S. Navy. At 9:30, the Nimitz strike group came alive. Every ship, Nimitz, Chung-hoon, Kidd, instantly shared the same combat picture through cooperative engagement capability. On the carrier deck, 104,000 tons of floating steel diplomacy shifted like clockwork. Aircraft moved, destroyers realigned. The Americans were forming a wall of steel, daring anyone to break it. 5 minutes later, the skies filled with new blips. An E-2D Hawkeye, flying 25,000 feet above, detected multiple Chinese J-15 fighters lifting off the carrier Shandong. They were climbing south toward the American, except they could barely climb at all. The Shandong still used a ski jump launch system, forcing its jets to take off with half fuel and lighter payloads. They were already struggling before the fight even began. Then, sonar caught something else: a Type 039 diesel-electric submarine, 80 miles away and loud enough to wake the dead. Its propellers screamed like a freight train underwater. Any seasoned submarine commander would have been horrified, but the Chinese didn't seem to care. They were trying a multi-domain intimidation stunt: old destroyers, noisy subs, and outdated jets. The kind of bluff that only works if your opponent is weak. Unfortunately for Beijing, they just picked the wrong ocean and the wrong century. By 9:37, the Nimitz erupted in the kind of controlled chaos only American carriers can handle. F/A-18, Super Hornets from VFA-14, top hatters thundered into the sky every 45 seconds, a precision ballet of jet engines and steam catapults. Meanwhile, Chinese carriers still relied on their ski ramps, watching what real naval aviation looks like. The first wave of Super Hornets hit 15,000 feet. Their AN/APG-79 AESA radars scanning the sky like invisible spotlights. The difference in technology was absurd. Each U.S. radar could track dozens of targets at once, while the Chinese systems swung side to side like a slow-moving flashlight, practically advertising their location. Every F-18 was linked through Link 16, sharing a single unified picture of the entire battle space. When one pilot saw something, they all saw it. The Chinese? Stuck on radio calls and guesswork. Electronic warfare planes, EA-18G Growlers, joined in, jamming every Chinese frequency in range. Within minutes, their screens turned to chaos. Phantom contacts, ghost targets, radar echoes. It was like trying to fight shadows in a storm. The Americans shifted into the wall formation, a deadly three-tier defense perfected over decades. High, medium, low, overlapping kill zones, nowhere to hide. The Chinese stayed bunched together, forced to maintain visual contact since their data links couldn't keep up. Their formation looked good in propaganda, but this was real combat. At 9:43, the RC-135 rivet joint circling above picked up radio chatter. Chinese pilots requesting permission for aggressive maneuvers. They were literally asking Beijing for clearance to act. By the time they'd get it, the battle would already be over. Meanwhile, the Princeton's radar tracked everything. Objects the size of baseballs over 160 miles away. When the Chinese destroyer's Type 346A radar suddenly locked onto the Nimitz, it crossed a deadly line, the naval equivalent of pointing a loaded gun at someone's head. Inside the American CIC, the crew held firm. Fire control radars stayed cold. But make no mistake, one wrong move and 122 missiles were ready to erase that ship from existence. The lock lasted 30 seconds, just long enough for the Chinese to save face, not long enough to trigger American retaliation. Then came the final insult. A J-15 fighter dove toward an American F-18, performing a thump pass, a close-range intimidation trick. The U.S. pilot, trained at Top Gun, calmly rolled inverted, slid behind the Chinese jet, and for 3 perfect seconds had a clean kill shot. He didn't fire. Professionalism over pride. That's the American difference. Down below, the Chinese sub made its fatal mistake, surfacing its snorkel to recharge. The Princeton's sonar had been tracking it for an hour. If this went live, one ASROC missile would have ended it in 12 seconds flat. By 3:30 p.m., the Nimitz launched every aircraft it had. 48 jets filled the sky, Growlers, Hawkeyes, Super Hornets, painting the horizon in noise and vapor trails. Chinese radar screens turned to static art. Their operators couldn't tell what was real anymore. Then, the final show of dominance. A Virginia-class submarine surfaced 6 miles from the Chinese carrier Shandong. 8 days, it had followed them unseen. Now, it breached like a black leviathan under the sun. A silent message that said everything. We were here the whole time. Cameras clicked. The Americans vanished beneath the waves again. Message delivered. By evening, Chinese jets limped back to base on fumes. Their pilots exhausted, their morale gone. The Shandong quietly turned north. Officially, they completed exercises. Unofficially, they'd been humiliated. Because in the South China Sea, the U.S. Navy doesn't just sail. It owns the ocean.